Reason 1. The shattered night, how naps steal your deepest sleep. Evelyn wasn't alone. Arthur, a once energetic 78-year-old, also swore by his naps. But as he tossed and turned night after night, a disturbing question began to form. Could his beloved naps be the reason his nights felt so broken? His journey to an answer starts with the first, most common casualty of daytime napping: fragmented nighttime sleep. Arthur jolted awake, the alarm clock mockingly blinking 2 a.m. Again? He muttered, the frustration of familiar knot in his stomach. His sacred afternoon naps, once a comfort, now felt like a cruel trick. He remembered his doctor saying, "Naps are fine, Arthur." But a seed of doubt had been planted. It was a stubborn little seed, watered by nights like these. His typical night was a battlefield. Tossing, turning, brief spurts of unsatisfying sleep, then waking again and again only to greet the morning feeling utterly unrest. It was exhausting. You see, our bodies operate on an internal clock, a sophisticated mechanism known as the circadian rhythm. This clock dictates when we feel sleepy and when we feel alert. But after 70, this finely tuned system becomes more, fragile. It's like an old watch. It still keeps time, but it's more easily knocked off kilter. A late or long nap becomes a wrench in the works, confusing this delicate internal clock. The signals get crossed. When it's time for your body to wind down and release melatonin, the sleep hormone, it's thinking, wait, didn't we just rest? So, melatonin release gets mistimed or worse, significantly reduced. This is how your daytime sleep actively sabotages your chances of deep, restorative sleep at night. Arthur, a methodical man by nature, started keeping a sleep diary. 2 columns. Nap times and the dreaded 2 a.m. awakenings. The pattern was undeniable, stark in blue ink on white paper. The longer the nap, the surer the early morning jolt. A tense moment arrived one particularly bleak morning. He almost gave up, slumping in his chair, thinking, "This is just old age. What can I do?" Defeat felt heavy. But then, during a weekend visit, his bright-eyed granddaughter, Chloe, mentioned an article she'd read for a health class, something about sleep hygiene. It was a lifeline. He decided right then to skip his naps for 1 full week. An experiment. His wife, Martha, ever the pragmatist, raised an eyebrow. "You'll be a bear to live with, Arthur, mark my words," she'd said, a hint of concern in her voice. He just grunted. He had to try. The first 3 napless days were tough. He felt sluggish, irritable, Martha's prediction ringing true. And still, the 2 a.m. wake-up call persisted. On the 3rd night, though, something shifted. He woke, yes, the clock still showed that infuriating 2 a.m. But this time, he actually fell back asleep by 2:30 a.m. It was a small victory, almost imperceptible, but it was something that hadn't happened in months. A tiny spark of hope ignited in the pre-dawn gloom. Reason 2. The dwindling thirst, naps, and the vanishing urge to sleep. That small victory for Arthur, falling back asleep, hinted at more than just a less fragmented night. It pointed to another crucial element his naps were depleting, the very hunger his brain needed to sleep soundly. Barbara, 81 and always on the go, would soon discover this very same pressure was missing in her life. Barbara, a woman who prided herself on her sharp mind and active lifestyle, stared blankly at her open book at 11 p.m. "Why am I not tired?" she wondered, a common nightly frustration that gnawed at her. Her short afternoon refresher nap, usually around 30 minutes, felt miles away, yet its effects clearly lingered. She missed the feeling of true, deep sleepiness, that delicious surrender to the night. What was going on? It boils down to something called sleep drive or sleep pressure. Think of it like a building hunger throughout the day. The longer you're awake and active, the more this pressure builds. When it's high enough, your body craves sleep, helping you fall asleep quickly and stay asleep. But here's the catch. As we age, our bodies naturally produce less of the hormones that help us sleep deeply, like melatonin and growth hormone. This makes building a strong sleep drive during the day even more vital. And those daytime naps, Especially if they stretch beyond 20 to 30 minutes, they act like a release valve, letting some of that crucial sleep pressure out. You might feel refreshed for an hour or two, sure, but then bedtime arrives and you're simply not tired enough. You lie there, eyes open, wondering why your body isn't cooperating. Barbara, ever proactive, picked up a sleep pamphlet from her local community center. It mentioned things like sleep efficiency and briefly referenced work done at sleep centers in California and Germany regarding older adults who avoided napping reporting better rest. Interesting, but the frustration mounted. Barbara tried to force sleep. Warm milk was first no luck. Then, a sleep aid a well-meaning friend had given her. That just left her feeling groggy and disoriented the next morning. She felt caught, trapped in a cycle of daytime napping and nighttime wakefulness. Then, during a particularly restless moment, a snippet from a health talk she'd attended years ago echoed in her mind. Treat your sleep like a carefully prepared meal. Don't snack all day. That was it. Her aha moment. Naps were the snacks, ruining her appetite for the main course of nighttime sleep. The realization was powerful. That very afternoon, instead of settling down for her usual nap, Barbara made a decision. She would replace it with a brisk 20-minute walk in her beloved garden. As she tied her walking shoes, a mix of apprehension and determination filled her. Could this simple swap, this small act of defiance against her established habit, actually make her hungry for sleep again? Reason 5. The metabolic mayhem, naps, digestion, and unseen health risks. Eleanor's choice to forego her nap was a brave one, aiming to reclaim her nights. But the tendrils of daytime sleep reached further than just her mind. For Robert, they were quietly upsetting a delicate balance deep within his body. Robert, 78, winced as he reached for the antacids again, a sour taste rising in his throat. It was a familiar ritual after his post-lunch nap. Must be something I ate, he'd grumble to his wife, Susan, oblivious that his cherished nap itself was likely the real issue. He'd noticed other things too. His trousers fitting a little tighter around the waist, a persistent energy slump that hit him like a wave after he woke from his doze. But he dismissed it all as just part of getting older. What else could it be? Here's a crucial point that often goes unnoticed. Napping, especially after meals, can significantly interfere with your body's digestive and metabolic rhythms. Your digestive system, much like your sleep cycle, thrives on regularity, meals at predictable times, movement to stimulate metabolism, and periods of rest that align with your overarching circadian rhythm. But when you nap, particularly after lunch or mid-afternoon, you essentially hit the pause button on everything. Digestion slows down. Nutrient absorption becomes less efficient. Even how your body handles blood sugar can be thrown off kilter. Over time, this can translate into feeling bloated more often, noticing unexplained weight gain, or even seeing your cholesterol or blood pressure numbers creep up at your next checkup. Your body, confused by the untimely rest, starts to hoard calories instead of burning them efficiently, thinking it's in energy conservation mode. This sluggishness isn't just uncomfortable. It can open the door to more serious, chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. These are significant, often overlooked dangers of habitual, poorly timed napping. At Robert's last checkup, his doctor, Dr. Evans, had expressed mild concern about his rising blood sugar and the few extra pounds he'd put on. Need to watch the diet, Robert, maybe a bit more activity. Dr. Evans had said, not making any connection to Robert's napping habits, another instance where the true culprit often remains hidden, misdiagnosed as simply the inevitable decline of age. The unseen toll was mounting, and there's a psychological loop that often comes with it too. After eating, if your default is to lie down and drift off, it becomes harder to distinguish between genuine physical tiredness and a more subtle emotional avoidance. Are you truly sleepy? Or perhaps a bit lonely? Are you resting? Or are you just bored? These questions blur, and before you know it, you might be using sleep to fill spaces in your day that were meant for movement, connection, and active engagement with life. Robert was a man of routine, but he'd also been feeling more isolated since his golf buddies had moved away. One afternoon, while waiting for Susan at the local community center, he overheard a young, energetic fitness instructor talking animatedly to a group about the benefits of post-meal walks for metabolic health. Initially, Robert was dismissive. What do these youngsters know? But the phrase metabolic health stuck with him, echoing Dr. Evans' concerns. Later that week, after a particularly heavy Sunday lunch, instead of automatically heading to his recliner, Robert found himself hesitating. He looked at his comfortable old walking shoes by the back door. With a sigh, he laced them up, taking a tentative first step out into the cool afternoon air. He felt a strange mix of reluctance and a burgeoning curiosity. Could a simple walk really change anything, especially that persistent heartburn he'd been battling? Reason 6. The emotional muting, when naps dull your spark and resilience. Robert's short walks began to ease his physical discomfort, but the impact of habitual napping wasn't just physical. For Abigail, whose story began our journey into this topic, the daily retreat into sleep was subtly dimming her emotional world, a far more insidious kind of theft. Abigail, 82, sat by the window in her sun-dappled living room, a book resting unread in her lap. Her daughter, Chloe's, cheerful phone call had ended a few minutes ago, and now a familiar grayness, a kind of emotional fog, settled over her. I just don't feel much of anything anymore, she'd confessed to her own reflection in the window pane just last week. The words a stark admission. Her daily naps, initially a refuge after her beloved husband, George, passed away 2 years prior, had somehow morphed into a muted, colorless existence. The vibrant hues of her life seemed to be fading. As we age, our emotional world, our ability to connect, to feel joy, to find resilience in the face of loss or stress, becomes even more profoundly important. But sleeping during the day, especially when it evolves into a consistent daily pattern, has a subtle, almost sneaky way of dulling these essential emotional edges, can flatten your emotional range. You might start to feel less engaged with the world around you, less excited by things that once brought pleasure, less motivated to pursue interests or connect with loved ones. You might not even realize it's happening at first. Life just feels a little more muted, a little more distant, like watching a movie through a gauze screen. This emotional blunting isn't just a vague feeling. There's a physiological basis. Daytime sleep can fragment your natural hormonal rhythms, and this includes the precise, timely release of neurotransmitters that help you process and experience emotion, vital chemicals like serotonin and dopamine. You're no longer riding the natural wave of your body's energy highs and lows. Instead, by napping, you're cutting those arcs short, making it harder to build emotional momentum, to recover from setbacks with your usual bounce, or even to feel truly alive and present in joyful moments. Think about it, those little sparks that make life rich. There's also the critical issue of mental flexibility. When you're well-rested and consistently awake during daylight hours, your brain has the space and agility to think creatively, to solve problems, and to adapt to unexpected events with grace. But when daytime naps become an entrenched routine, your ability to mentally shift gears, to stay sharp and emotionally resilient, can slowly, almost imperceptibly, fade. Abigail's daughter, Chloe, had noticed the change. "Mom," she'd said gently one afternoon, her voice laced with concern. "Remember how you loved painting by the window? The light is beautiful today. Maybe just for a little while, instead of your nap." Abigail initially resisted. The very thought of setting up her easel, of mixing paints, felt monumental, exhausting. A tense moment hung in the air. She almost snapped at Chloe, a rare flare of irritation. But then she saw the genuine worry, the love, in her daughter's eyes, and the sharpness receded. Later that week, one quiet afternoon, Abigail found herself standing before her old art supplies. Hesitantly, instead of lying down, she picked up a paintbrush. The initial strokes on the clean canvas were clumsy, hesitant, her mind still feeling a bit foggy, a bit gray. But then, a splash of unexpected, vibrant cerulean blue on the canvas made her pause. She stared at that blue, a pure, joyful color. And as she looked, a tiny, almost forgotten flicker of interest, A whisper of her old artistic spark stirred within her. She wondered, could the splash of color, this small act of creation, be more restorative, more life-giving than an hour of sleep? Reason 7. The drained battery weakening your natural sleep-generating power. As Abigail mixed another color, a forgotten tune hummed on her lips. This reawakening of her senses was intrinsically linked to the final, crucial reason why daytime naps can be so detrimental: their direct assault on the body's own powerful mechanism for ensuring deep sleep. Imagine trying to charge a battery that's constantly being trickle-drained. That's essentially what daytime naps do to your homeostatic sleep drive, your body's natural, powerful need for deep, restorative sleep that builds steadily all day long. It's a fundamental aspect of our physiology. The longer you're meaningfully awake and engaged, the stronger this biological hunger for sleep becomes as night approaches. This isn't just a vague feeling of tiredness. It's a measurable physiological process. But daytime sleep, especially those longer, unstrategic naps, interrupts this crucial buildup. It's like snacking heavily right before a carefully prepared banquet. When dinner is served, your appetite is diminished. You show up at bedtime, and your brain and body are just not hungry enough to rest deeply. This effect isn't usually an immediate crisis. Rather, it's a slow, insidious creep. You might start noticing that you wake up more frequently during the night, or perhaps you can't fall asleep right away, tossing and turning for what feels like an eternity. Maybe your sleep feels shallow and unrefreshing, leaving you groggy in the morning. So what's the common response? You nap again during the day to try and make up for the lost nighttime rest. And just like that, you're caught in a cycle that only worsens your overall sleep quality in the long run. Once this cycle gets going, it becomes increasingly harder to break. Even if you try to stop napping, you may find you're already dealing with significantly fragmented nighttime sleep. But here's the genuinely good news. This isn't a life sentence. Many older adults who consciously decide to reduce or eliminate their daytime napping see marked improvements in their sleep quality, often within just a few weeks. We saw snippets of this with Arthur, who started light morning exercises, Barbara, who stuck to her garden walks and even joined a book club for evening engagement, and Paul, who actively sought out daylight and poured his energy into a new woodworking project. The key is to actively engage your body and mind during the day. Simple things: getting outside in the morning light to help set your circadian rhythm, incorporating some form of consistent, light physical activity, and keeping social connections active and vibrant. These activities help reinforce that sense of daytime wakefulness your brain needs to build real, potent sleep pressure for later. When you protect your natural sleep drive, you're not just improving your sleep, you're actively protecting your alertness, your mood, and your long-term brain health. You're giving your body a profound reason to rest fully at night and, consequently, to rise with renewed energy in the morning. At this stage of life, the quality of sleep often matters even more than the sheer quantity, and that quality begins with how you thoughtfully spend your daytime hours. The stories of Abigail, Arthur, and the others show us it's possible. Their transformations began with understanding, followed by a simple choice. The image of a nap trap is potent, isn't it? It's not about demonizing rest, because our bodies, especially after 70, certainly need pauses. Instead, it's about recognizing when a seemingly harmless, even cherished habit quietly begins to chip away at our vitality, our mental clarity, and our overall well-being. If you've nodded along to some of these points, perhaps recognizing patterns in your own life, or that of a loved one you care about, please know this: that very recognition, that quiet aha moment, is the first, most powerful step towards transformation. The core message throughout these accounts isn't that naps are universally bad for everyone at every age, but that specifically after 70, their utility can wane and their downsides can become quite pronounced. The goal then shifts towards smarter resting. There's a world of difference between intentional rest, a quiet moment of mindfulness, a brief period of light activity followed by relaxation, or even just sitting peacefully with a cup of tea, and the kind of unconscious withdrawal into sleep that can disrupt the body's natural rhythms. Think back to the positive outcomes we've seen. Arthur found his blood pressure improved and his focus sharpened. Barbara rediscovered what real sleep felt like. Paul regained not just his sleep, but his focus and peace of mind. Eleanor saw her nights and days return to a more comfortable normal. Robert found his digestion improved and his mind clearer. And Abigail, our painter, felt herself coming back to herself, re-engaging with a cherished passion. These aren't just anecdotes. They're illustrations of what's possible when we align our daily habits with our body's needs. The crucial takeaway is that every hour of meaningful daylight engagement, be it through activity, social connection, or mental stimulation, is like saving up currency for a full, satisfying, and restorative sleep after dark. This kind of change doesn't just improve your sleep. It fundamentally changes how you age, preserving vitality and a keen sense of daily purpose. It's never too late to adjust course, even in your 70s, 80s, or beyond. The human body and mind are remarkably adaptable. The question isn't whether you can change, but whether you'll choose to. What small step, what single adjustment will you consider taking today to use your day to more effectively fuel your night? In doing so, you might reclaim not just your sleep, but a richer, more vibrant experience of life itself.